Welcome to the Explainer. So, have you ever wondered what it actually looks like inside a doctor's head when they're unraveling a really complex medical mystery? Well, today we're taking something that is completely abstract, clinical thought, and we're turning it into a concrete visual architecture. We're going to explore the Brown's Case Flow Builder. It's essentially a framework designed to literally map out medical decision-making. I mean, what if you could map the invisible medical mind? Just imagine that for a second. We're skipping the usual agenda today and jumping straight into the digital canvas where this exact mapping actually happens. We're looking at a system that lets medical professionals physically construct their diagnostic thought process block by block into a visible, sequential reasoning pipeline. Section 1, the clinical blank canvas. Okay, let's dive right into this. You know, every masterpiece starts with a blank slate, and clinical reasoning is honestly no different. We kick things off with the clinical blank canvas. This is where raw, newly presented medical cases introduced from scratch, just waiting to be unpacked, analyzed, and ultimately solved. Think of this platform as a giant digital Lego set for clinicians. The mechanics are beautifully simple. First, you start with your presented case as the anchor. From there, you just physically drag a line from one node to the next to link them together. You snap these conceptual blocks right into place, branching out into several different paths as the patient's symptoms dictate. And finally, you end the flow by exporting it into a formatted text or web file. It's literally about building a sequential pipeline of logic with your own hands. Section 2, the cognitive framework engines. So once you've got the hang of snapping the pieces together, the real magic is choosing which pieces to use. You might pull in a foundational Socratic clinical reasoning module first, just to get those big probing questions out there. Then you can start stacking it with incredibly advanced cognitive tools to dig deeper into the diagnosis. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual nature of human thought. Just consider this dichotomy for a moment. You can literally drag and drop a System 1 question generator right next to a System 2 question generator. This represents a classic psychological split. System 1 is our fast, intuitive gut reaction thinking, right? While System 2 is that slow, deliberate, analytical deduction. By placing both side by side, a clinician is structurally forced to cross-check their own rapid instincts against slow, methodical logic. It's a real game changer. Now, what's really fascinating about this juxtaposition is that the canvas lets you physically choose the exact type of logic you want to apply to a patient's symptoms. Notice the options you have available. Are you trying to map out a direct chain of biological events? Boom, drop in the causal reasoning block. Or are you weighing the statistical odds of a disease based on population data? Snap in the probabilistic reasoning module. You aren't just thinking about the case, you're actively architecting how to think about the case. Let's actually slow down for a second here, because the sheer analytical power of this is staggering. Imagine you have a highly complex patient, and you're able to just plug a Bayesian probability and likelihood ratio engine directly into your thought process. This specialized cognitive framework module forces you to mathematically map out diagnostic weights, so you aren't just guessing anymore. You're calculating exactly how the probability of a diagnosis shifts every single time a new test result comes back. But you know, medicine isn't just math, it's detective work. Think about these specialized cognitive modules. It is so cool to see hyper-specific cognitive drills available as simple drag-and-drop blocks. I mean, you've got a diagnostic timeout to just pause and reassess, a diagnostic anchor extractor to isolate the absolute most critical presenting symptoms so you don't lose focus. Then there's the why now precipitant hunter to figure out exactly why a chronic issue decided to flare up today of all days. You can even use epistemic certainty mapping to explicitly grade how confident you actually are in a piece of evidence. And my personal favorite, the red herring or signal to noise drill. You just drop this block into your workflow and it forces you to critically ask, wait, am I being distracted by completely irrelevant information right now? All right, Section 3, the broader medical ecosystem. Of course, clinical reasoning doesn't happen in a vacuum. A doctor's mind has to account for the real world, the hospital environment, and the patient's actual lived experience. To give you a sense of the massive interconnected scope of the Brown's platform, you can pull nodes from some incredibly diverse categories. We're talking modules for patient advocacy and individual care management, data analytics and analytical methodologies, patient safety, risk and systems failure, medical education, literature and basic science, health operations, systems and economics, and even framework architecture and meta design. The sheer breadth of structural tools at your fingertips lets you view a single patient case from almost any systemic angle imaginable. I absolutely love this next part. When we zero in specifically on patient safety and risk, the platform anticipates systemic hospital errors in such a unique, proactive way. You can plug in a module called the iatrogenic domino effect. Iatrogenic basically meaning an illness caused by medical treatment itself. Or you can even drop in a polycrisis and cascading failure simulator. You are literally running a simulation of how your chosen treatment plan might trigger a massive chain reaction of complications before you ever even write the prescription. It's like stress testing reality. And to make sure this logic is absolutely bulletproof, the builder includes what it calls shadow modules. So you don't just add a block for clinical genetics reasoning or evidence-based medicine insights and call it a day. No, you can drag and drop an adversarial shadow module right next to them. This is absolutely brilliant because it deliberately plays devil's advocate. It forcibly stress tests your clinical reasoning against the genetics or evidence-based literature, challenging your baseline assumptions at every single step of the map. Okay, on to Section 4, Sequential Clinical Reasoning Pipelines. Let's move on and see how this all builds into the final act. We have all these incredible modules, from Socratic questioning to adversarial shadow nodes to those cascading risk simulators, but how do they actually form a cohesive picture? Well, the crucial point here is that clinical logic is almost never a straight line, and the platform mimics this reality perfectly. Think about how any single node can connect to multiple next nodes to branch out into several distinct paths, and conversely, any node can receive multiple incoming links. Your thought process can diverge into 3 completely different hypothetical diagnoses and then perfectly converge back together the second a definitive lab result comes in. It just beautifully maps the multi-layered, branching reality of complex patient care. Eventually, though, every complex medical journey has to reach a conclusion. In the Vibe builder, you finalize your intricate branched map by linking everything to terminal nodes. You simply snap on an end create.md file or end create.html file block, or you can even clear your export flow to a basic text file. It takes all that highly structured, multidimensional thinking and cleanly exports it into an accessible, readable document that can be seamlessly shared with a whole medical team, reviewed by your peers, or filed directly into a patient's electronic record. Which brings us to a rather profound thought to close out today's explainer. If the invisible, highly complex art of clinical reasoning can be mapped out module by module, systematically stress-tested against our own cognitive biases, and visually architected on a digital canvas, how is this going to change the way we diagnose tomorrow? When the medical mind is no longer this hidden black box, but instead a collaborative, visible pipeline, the possibilities for improving patient care are truly limitless. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and as always, keep asking the big questions.